Life is full of both challenging and beautiful moments, and the stories we tell of those times in our lives bring an opportunity to bring such encouragement and hope to those who hear them. The saying goes that we are amazed at people's achievements, but we really connect with people on their vulnerabilities. We have sat around so many tables and heard the most incredible stories of people's perseverance and victory, and our hope is that you would be encouraged on your journey as we broadcast them. This is a place where everybody's story matters. Welcome to the Journey Podcast. Welcome back to the Journey Podcast. This is episode 7, and I'm sitting here with our friends Lynair and Jesse Hunter. And yeah, it's just such a privilege to have you guys here with us today. Fred went to a men's breakfast a little while ago, and Jesse was sharing his testimony, and he called me on the way home and he was like, Dee, this story is so powerful. We have to have dinner with them and see if they'd be willing to share on the podcast. And I think James Hoffey, who is like our ambassador, brand ambassador now, he went out and chatted with you, and before you even came for dinner, you had already agreed. And I think the whole way through dinner, we were chatting and you sent me his testimony and just of what the Lord has done in your lives. And I kept saying, guys, there's no pressure. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. But I know that your hearts today are to show God's redemptive love. And I know that your hearts are for every person out there who might be walking through similar things. Or Fred even said it, he came home and it made him want to be a better dad and a better husband and a better man. And I think we often see the highlights of where people are now, and you guys came like whispering into our lives and you come for dinner and everything's looks so amazing. But it's because of where you came from and what the Lord has done. And I know that there's so many people out there who are going to be so touched by your story and so marked. And Fred came home and he was so marked, and he came home, I could see he had been crying. So he was like, there weren't many dry eyes there. So yeah, I just want to thank you both. I know it took a lot of courage to come and sit here today, and I pray that those who are listening, and even for us sitting here, that the Holy Spirit would be with us, and that whatever is shared would all point back to the goodness of God in the end, because He's weaved Himself into your story, and He creates beautiful things out of ashes, as He says. And I know with you guys, there are many things that you still hold before Him, but He's made you guys into this beautiful testimony, and your best years are ahead of you. And yeah, just amazing. So I thought just to kick it off, because people like to know, like, oh, I wonder if she's got a dog. She has a dog.
We do have a dog, Eugene.
Eugene is the cutest name for a dog.
And he's as cute as his name.
Aww.
And so we're those weird empty nesters who our dog is now spoiled rotten. I mean, he doesn't have his own like crib and all that stuff. We're not that crazy, but he definitely is spoiled.
It.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yep. We have thought about it.
Oh, and what do you do?
I'm a director of functional development. So I help leaders be better leaders, and we have full lives. We work out every morning at 4 a.m. and walk our dog.
That's amazing.
I know.
That's like some serious discipline. Well done.
We're very disciplined.
We've been trying to get back into that, and you are inspiration.
Well, we're getting older. We got to keep taking care of ourselves. So
tomorrow when Fred wakes up at 6, he's going to be like, Jesse and Lynair are finishing up their workout. I can do this.
Yeah, we're way done.
You're already walking on the beach.
Yep.
And your protein
Gigi
shake.
to lots of kids.
Yeah, so, you're a grandma, which is unbelievable to me as well, because you look incredible.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We love them.
And you, Jesse?
Well, I'm her sidekick partner on the workouts.
Begrudgingly
I'm usually
some days.
Most of the time on the little struggle bus, and I got her trying to kick me into gear. But yeah, and then I water distribution and transmission here in the city of Flagler Beach, and and the spoiled dog with all the toys.
Yep. And you're a multi-talented man. You're quite modest in how you share all your giftings, because I've seen home renovations that you have done, and it's very classy.
He's very good at it.
Tinker a little bit. here and there.
Just a little here and there. So we are going to get to your story, obviously, because I know that you've also got like just a beautiful testimony of what the Lord's done in your life. But we're going to start with your story because that's what brought us all together today. And I know that in your heart, you're really praying that there's going to be just beautiful fruit that come out of this. And so that's the whole purpose is the word says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so even in you sharing today, there's breakthrough and just room for the Lord to get the glory. And sometimes I know that the enemy can use weapons of warfare against us, and it can just feel like he's been pounding you for years and years. But today you get to take those weapons, you get to pick them up, and we're going to fire them back at the enemy. So let's just kick off with that. Let's go back to where it all really started in your heart and as a child and your experience of just growing up in the home that you did.
Well, my parents, they divorced when I was 2. Came from Southern California, and they decided that I was going to live with my mom. So about, 5 years later, my mom remarried. I spent my summers staying with my dad. Kind of felt like I didn't belong. My dad had remarried, and she had a son. And so my stepbrother was getting most of my dad's attention.
And 24/7 too, because he lived there with him, right?
Right.
So.
And, and I always looked forward to spending the time with my father. But it just, it seemed to turn into being I was lacking the attention. I was lacking the father-son relationship.
And you were named after him, right? Your dad was also Jesse.
Yes, I'm the 4th.
Okay.
And one of the other issues was that obviously they got a divorce for a reason because they couldn't stand each other anymore. But being named after my father, that name kind of stuck. So my mom had kind of gave me a nickname, and I went by Jay. And so that was kind of what I grew up on, living with my mom. But every summer I would go down and spend the time with my father. And with my other families that I went by Jesse, except for my grandma. My grandma would call me Jay.
Okay.
But that always seemed to cause a little argument, with my father because that's not his name, So I kind of struggled with that. I guess in my younger years, I didn't struggle as much. But as I got older, because they were more vocal about it, that it started to wear on me to where if my mom doesn't care for my dad, and if I'm named after my father, what does that kind of do to me? Where am I at in that?
Just kind of feeling out of place no matter where you were.
Correct. Yeah. And then with my stepfather, we always tend to argue. We never got along. So I struggled fitting in there. Like I didn't belong.
I remember you mentioning how you didn't always have like the name brand things. And so it was another thing. You're trying to make friends and you're wanting to fit in and find like a place of belonging. And you just felt like, you know, they would all have these brand name things and the nice skateboards and, you know, whatever was in at the time.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to have the best of the best?
Exactly.
You know? And yeah, you know, my parents, my mom and stepdad, they didn't make all the money. You know, they kind of made what we got by with. But I was into all of the good stuff. I liked watching the programs of the BMX and the skateboard, and that's kind of what drew me in, you know, that was the kind of things I was into. And so I wanted to be able to hang with my friends that had that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I kind of, matter of fact, I think the skateboard I got was a used skateboard from
a thrift store,
somebody, you know, and
yeah.
And even the bike that I got, I picked up a bike from a yard sale that had those plastic wheels on it and the bearings were shot in it. And, you know, but I mean, it was, you know, and I just didn't have that. I mean, I know it's materialistic things, but when you're a kid and you're trying to fit in, it is kind of.
They seem so, it does seem so frivolous when you think back on it. But at the time, and this is such a silly example, but I started playing soccer and my mom wanted to first check out if I was actually going to play soccer before she bought me like the proper gear. But I insisted. I was like, Mom, I really want like the proper soccer gear. So she got me the proper soccer gear. And I remember like I played for 2 or 3 weeks and I was done because I wanted a horse ride and do other things. And I remember when I got married the first week, I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I'm so sorry. You guys were like, you know, you I don't know what you had to do to get me all that soccer gear and I never even used it. But it's only like in hindsight, right? You realize they were trying to provide, like, you know, they were doing the best that they could, but there were like 4 siblings, everyone needing different things. And that pressure that I felt of like, now I'm married and I'm going to have kids. And yeah.
And, you know, spending the time with my father wasn't like, I don't want to make it sound like it was so just, I was drawing for all this attention, but at the same time, I was drawing for the attention. And they always made a point that when I did come for the summer, you know, we went and did something. They always had like a vacation plan that was going to be something, you know, but after that, it was, you know, kind of back to reality. And here I am just trying to fit in for those 4 weeks or the month that you only get, you know. And so I really missed having that relationship with my father. And it just always seemed to just carry on. I just struggled with wanting that father figure. And so that led into wanting the materialistic things, you know, wanting more and more. And I don't know if it had to be the better of the things. Like I explained, I wanted the better, but I did want it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'm following what you're saying.
But yeah, and it just, through my years, it just created more havoc on myself of wanting more. And so I found myself wanting to reach out for other things to fill that void. I dated many girls, you know, trying to fill what I was missing, to speed up the time. You know, when I turned 17, I had a girlfriend. She ended up getting pregnant. I ended up moved in with her, and still going to school.
Wow.
And 3 days after I turned 18, we had a baby girl named Brittany. And and here I was, not being trying to be the father, I guess I should say.
You were, yeah. I mean, you really wanted to do the right thing. You moved out and.
Yeah. I mean, I was lacking that family life. 'Cause I guess you kind of, what's the word? Like not disturbed, but with my father and stepmom and brother, that it was kind of chaos. And then having that same chaos with my mom and stepdad, not having the true family life. So I wanted to have that. And so this was my chance to try and be the father that I needed to be.
And to belong.
Right. Yeah. So we decided that we were going to move out of town and move down south where the rest of my family, my father was at. And we got down there, got a job, got an apartment, tried to build our life together, and things went south again. We started arguing a lot, which I felt that the anger that I was starting to feel was part of what my family had always said. It was called the Hunter trait. My father had battled with a lot of anger. My uncles had some anger, and so I just thought that was part of who I was.
Yeah.
We always kidded around with it. It was something.
So it's like it's almost excused because it's just part of the family heritage, actually.
Right. Yeah. And so it just carried on, and then she decided that she was going to leave. So she moved back up north with my daughter, and I stayed down there for a while, and decided to move back up north where my friends and stuff were at. I moved in with my mom for a little bit. I know. Here I am moving in with my mother.
Not cool.
It wasn't. It was a short term because I was couch bound is where I was at. So, but yeah. So I got my own place and tried to get my life straight. And then I ended up meeting a woman. She ended up being married at the time. But once again, here I am trying to fill that void. And dealing with the wrong women, especially one that's married. We ended up together. She left her husband. She had two girls, and they were 6 months old and 2 years old.
Wow.
When we got together. And I took on the responsibility. But at the same time, I was lacking the responsibility of being the father that I was supposed to be to my own child. And part of that was me and her mother could never get along. It was always a battle, always a fight all the time. And so I just wanted to avoid the conflicts. So I chose to stay away. And
it must have been such a burden to carry, because in your heart, you wanted to belong and you wanted to love her and you wanted to be the dad. But then at the same time, all you had experienced was chaos and stress in relationships. And so I think your body, like you often just do these things to survive, right? You just did what you knew to do.
Right.
And you'd never been modeled anything different. And I think, that God can heal so much in our hearts, but if you never had the Lord in your heart, so how were you ever going to give from a place of when you were actually broken yourself?
And it was, there was times where I would, go and get my daughter, but it was a fight to get her, and then it was always this guy was there, that guy was there, and this is your new daddy, this is your new daddy. And so it was hurtful, and so I guess part of it was I wanted to stay away because of the pain and the hurt and the arguing all the time. And so in the long run, she's the one who got the hurt, to this day, I still don't have that good relationship with her. I don't know. I part of it I take on as a responsibility. But as her being an adult now, we've kind of had, some conversations, but it just always stems to be that I guess I have to make the steps, but I'm the grown up, right?
Reconciliation can be a long and messy process, but yeah, just pray and trust that those steps will continue, even if it's a little bit at a time. Yeah. So then you had 2 daughters.
Yeah. So
2 more daughters.
2 more daughters. Life was good for a while. And then I found myself still not feeling what I was missing. So I ended up having an affair that led on to multiple affairs. And then one that even went on as far as 4 years.
I was just thinking earlier how when we are so desperate to belong and to feel safe in relationships and to feel like we're a part of and we're not on the outskirts, often you end up doing the exact opposite. You actually end up destroying the relationships around you because of that. And it's so strange. It's like Paul says in Romans, how what I want to do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, I do. And it's like you were living in that. You were so wanting to feel like you belonged. You were so wanting to be a good dad. You were so wanting to feel like you belonged and that you were the family man that you desired. But there was just that void inside of you that just could not be filled.
Right. And then the anger followed in with all of that, the drinking. So all of that together just, it caused a lot of chaos, a lot of problems. And to this day, I don't know if she knew about any of it. We ended up separating, and then eventually getting a divorce. The girls at the time when we separated didn't want to have nothing to do with me. And it took a little while before they kind of came around a little bit. I had met Lynair. We started dating.
And where were you at? Maybe this is like a good time just to share where you had come from and, yeah, just your journey, like where you were at when you guys met.
I was messy. I had, about 8 years earlier, I had met my ex-husband when I was 15. We'd started dating. We got married when I was 19 and had 3 amazing kids. But trauma from childhood had followed me through that. And I had an affair on my ex-husband after 17 years of marriage.
Yeah.
And so by the time I met Jesse, I had worked my way through a lot of my mess, but I was still very messy because I couldn't get out of the guilt of what I had done to my children and my ex-husband.
Yeah.
Because I was so selfish in my choices.
And it was traumatic coming out of that. I remember you saying you were homeless.
Yeah. I mean, I had moved out, and just devastated and blew up my whole life. I couldn't see beyond my own nose, is what I like to say, because I was so self-absorbed in my own decisions. And so I lost a place I was living. I went and lived with a roommate with 3 kids, and that didn't work out. And standing there with a girlfriend, and I said, I have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And she said, you can come to my house.
Wow.
And thank gosh for her, because I mean, I had family, but I didn't want to crawl back because I had made so many bad decisions.
And I remember you saying how, like with JC's story, it was kind of all in the dark and kind of hidden, which also brings so much shame because it's all in the dark. And then the shame that you carried was because everything was so public. And you guys had been this well-known couple in the town that you lived in. And like you can't even walk down the street without someone.
No.
Yeah.
No, it was everywhere. Everybody knew. He was much younger than me. And so it was the talk of the town.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get away from it. And not that I should have, because I did something wrong, but I continued to live in that sin for a year.
Yeah.
And just, blew up my poor little kid's life.
Aww.
And so by the time I met him, I hadn't healed from any of that. I think I struggled. My parents did the best they could.
Yeah.
And a girl wants their dad. And I just didn't get that attention. So I sought love in all the wrong places at all the wrong times. And I continued that. And so when I met Jesse, I was a mess still because I couldn't get out of my guilt and shame for what I had done and how I had taken my kids through the mud and what it had done to my children. And so I was just a mess. I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel good enough for anything. Yeah. And so I was just in my own disastrous, broken place.
Wow. You were both in a really tough place.
Oh, yeah.
To meet.
And I hid everything. From her, when I met her, So
she didn't know that, she didn't know that you were in a mess.
She didn't know anything of what I had done.
And I thought he was separated from his ex-wife. I didn't know. I knew I didn't know the whole thing. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I knew he was, but I didn't know that he was still in some of the places he was in. I had no idea.
So then you guys dated, the 2 of you.
We dated. It was very rocky.
Tumultuous, I would say.
The anger, the drinking never stopped. We just had this conversation the other day, and she's like, I look back, and she's like, what was I thinking? Why didn't I leave? Why did I stay with you?
Because it was so bad.
You were painting all the red flags green.
Oh.
I was painting them all green, and I think because I thought I deserve this because of what I had done. I thought, you know what, I deserve this because the horrible things that I did to my kids and to those that loved me, my parents, all those things that suffered.
So hard,
They all suffered from friends. I betrayed everybody. But
I think that's the heartache of divorce and just broken relationships, is that when you're in it, it's all you think about is yourself and you're in the situation. But then when you think of the bigger picture, it really touches so many people. It affects so many people. so much broader than just who you are.
And just the people here.
Yeah.
Like, and what it did to their lives and the grandkids and all that. You
Yes.
don't think of any of that because
Yeah.
you're just selfish.
You're caught up in it.
Caught up in it. You're
Yeah.
caught up in your sin. So I think that's probably why I said, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But I do know.
Thank the Lord that you stuck around.
And I had a lot of lovely Christian women in my life that surrounded me in that time of brokenness.
Yeah.
That pulled me into Bible studies and walked with me and prayed with me. And so I was walking with the Lord
Okay.
when Jesse and I met, but
All
I had
right.
1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'd become a
Yes.
Christian at 19.
Yeah.
But I always say I was a look good Christian. I showed up at church and we looked good.
Yeah.
And the kids were dressed perfect and they went to Christian school. But Jesus didn't live in my heart.
Yeah.
And so,
And we can, you can look good on a Sunday.
we
Everything
looked
can
good.
seem fine. But the Lord is so much more concerned with our hearts, right?
Yeah. I had that empty piece only he could fill.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. And
Yeah.
so then you,
So we were dating. So she told me she went to church. So I decided I would go with her. Just, why wouldn't I want to please this good looking babe right here?
hot lady.
okay.
So I started going to church with her on Sundays, and it was like every Sunday, every sermon was like tapping me on the shoulder, like
Yeah.
telling me this is for you. And
He bawled every
time.
service.
Every time, like,
service. People are looking at me like, who's this guy you brought? like, is he all right?
sorry, God gave me a sensitive heart. What can I say?
I love that about you.
But yeah, so that happened, and we continued to date each other, and
live together in sin.
yeah, and then we decided that we were gonna live together, and that created a whole nother thing. Just between us, it created problems, and then people on the outside, because of what we were doing, going to church and living together, creating sin. And then,
Well, I had always had a feeling there was more.
Okay. Something wasn't fitting, right?
Yeah, like women on his route. And I was just like, something doesn't. And I would question him and he'd get very defensive. The anger would flare. But my intuition told me, but I didn't want to not believe it because I didn't want to fail one more thing
Yes.
in my life.
Yeah.
And so we were driving down the road one day and the woman he had had a 4-year affair with sent him a text. And it was basically telling a lot of things that I had wondered.
Oh, wow.
And so we're driving down the road. I'm reading his phone and he went crazy and angry. It's, and just deflect. And it was an ugly time.
Yeah.
But I started uncovering all the things I had no idea that he'd had all these multiple affairs and I didn't know. And so that day was pretty traumatic. But again, I stayed because that's where I didn't want to be a failure again.
Yeah.
I'd already failed one thing. I didn't want to fail something else.
Yeah. And sometimes staying is easier than facing that loss again, like having to walk through that again. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it was rocky.
Yeah. But you guys continue to go to church, right?
we continued to go to church. I ended up getting, was it?
You went to Trace Diaz
Yeah, I
first.
went to this camp called Trace Diaz.
It's like a men's
Men's
ministry.
and women's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, they
Women's
do
is one weekend, men's is
Okay.
another. I was very involved in it way before I met him.
Okay.
And that's where I got a group of women
Yes.
that surrounded me.
All right.
Yeah. So you go, you get sponsored basically to go, and it's to bring you closer to Christ, and just open you up.
Yeah.
And it opened me up big time. I was known as the crybaby through the weekend.
And had you opened up about your past yet or not
No.
yet? Okay.
No. But it was kind of the same thing of when we were going to church, how each sermon was directed at me. Each talk that was said was,
Right at your heart.
it was me, right? And so I finished through the weekend. And then once you go through the weekend, then you get to come back and you can serve. So then you get to be on the other side of it.
Oh, yeah.
So then you get to serve on the men that come in, so then I continued to do that. And, which just brings you so much closer to God and cause you see what he's doing in people, throughout the weekend. Cause you miss it when you go through, cause you don't get to see what's going on the outside. And then when you go back to serve, there's different places where you serve at, obviously. And so each time, you just see what God does in people and how he can turn people around. And I felt like that's what he was doing with me, was changing me. But then I found myself back in filling the void again.
We got engaged. Finally, we got engaged. And I had picked up my wedding dress on a Saturday, and on a Tuesday, I found God here. I was not someone who checked his phone. I didn't want to be that. I kept saying, "You're a grown woman. If you're checking someone's phone, you probably shouldn't be in this relationship."
Yeah.
And I felt prompted to go check his phone, and there was a deleted message from a woman. And ever since I had found out about the other things, I had this unsettling feeling.
Yeah.
And so I confronted him, and the rage, the denial, all the things that happen when someone doesn't want to be found out.
Yeah.
And so the rage overtook everything else, and we made a choice to keep it hidden,
Okay.
to not tell anybody. And he has a men's group. All the wives, he was in a men's group with all the husbands.
Okay.
So it's not like we didn't have community.
Yeah. It was like right there and no one knew.
We had one couple we told, and that was it.
Wow.
We told nobody. We hid everything
Yeah.
and went through with the wedding.
Wow.
But again, I felt like I deserved it for what I had done
Yeah.
in my life. I thought, well, this is what you get.
Yeah.
And I know God does not work that way, but
No.
my humanness.
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
"This is
Yeah.
what you
of
get."
course. Yeah.
And so I struggled through
Yeah.
to the wedding. The honeymoon was rocky.
It was.
It was not a good honeymoon.
Yeah.
I went on to drinking, anger.
So I always say you can't fight and heal at the same time.
It's true.
And so there was no healing because there was just so much fighting.
And when things are hidden, it's so amplified. It's so big because sometimes it's like once it's exposed, it kind of loses its power.
But it was in the dark, and we
Yeah.
kept it, and we did that purposefully.
Yeah.
And I did it to protect him because I didn't want people to judge me
Yes.
of here you are again.
Yeah.
You just keep a pattern.
Yeah.
And he did it because, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you.
It was just kind of like you said, a pattern, I guess, like trying to fill the void of what I was always missing, I guess I don't know. There's other ways of finding things that would fill your void, but for some reason that was what I always was drawn to. I guess it was more of the attention, because I was lacking that attention all growing up. So if somebody was willing to give me that attention, then that's where I was going to thrive to,
Yeah.
True, he did it to me. He like love bombs you before you. And I didn't like him at first, but that's another story for
He was
another
persistent.
day. He was persistent when he shouldn't have been. So.
And then I know it all kind of came apart, right? Because you did actually end up bringing it to your community groups.
We went through this thing called Genesis. He went through it with men. I went through it with a group of women. And it's like a deep dive into just healing. And I felt the Lord tell me, you have to tell. You can't keep this in the darkness any longer.
And hadn't you, just to go back, you'd gone on another men's retreat and you'd come home and she was gone, right? She hadn't come to the final ceremony. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead, but that was such a...
that was after this, but yeah.
Oh, was it after this?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is after we had come to it. I came home and told him, here, I feel God's telling me, and he lost it, went crazy, got mad and said, absolutely not.
Yes.
And I just wouldn't let it go because I knew I was strengthening my relationship with the Holy Spirit and being in his word and letting that fill me.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, God's telling me. And so he made time with his men. I made time with my women.
Yeah.
And we shared.
Okay.
And this is where community is so important.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to.
No,
the rage was so out of control because I was afraid of judgment.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, what are they going to think of us? What are they going to think of me?
Yeah.
You know, she had already because the community, you know, she knew the wives and the husbands before I even came along.
Oh yeah.
So she already had that relationship. So what are they going to think of?
Yeah. What was it going to
me?
mean for you?
Yeah.
Were you going to be rejected again?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And are they going to tell me to leave him?
Yes.
And so, but that's not what they did.
Yeah.
No.
No, they loved us.
Yeah.
And they walked with us and they prayed with us and they cried with us. And his men came and surrounded him and laid hands on him.
Wow.
Like it was, like I was home by myself and get a knock at the door and here's 5 men showing up at your door.
Wow.
Telling you to sit down, and all they did was surround me and put their hands on me and just pray for me.
Wow.
And
our pastor and his wife took every phone call because then the healing started. They got us in counseling.
Yeah.
And so the community, God's people, is what really brought us to a place where we could look at each other and let go of some of the hurt and the pain.
Yeah. And how important for a community to be a safe place, because that could have broken you again if that community was not gracious and loving. And I sometimes think, it's just, I lost my train of thought there for a second, but
it's true.
It's like, but in community, you know, that the Lord, this is what I was going to say, in order for us to be healed in areas, he has to surround you with people who have the grace to help you stand through that season of healing. And how God put you in that community. Like, thank the Lord you were in that community with those people, because it just could have been so different.
Yeah, they were amazing. And I don't know where we'd be without them. I really don't.
Yeah,
They're so instrumental in our story and our walk. But what I didn't do is I took Jesse and I held him like this. Because if I can control you, you cannot cheat on me. And I held him so tight, he hadn't gotten rid of his anger.
Yeah.
And so it just created this consistent friction of my hands are closed around him. He would rage. And he's a runner when he rages. So he would leave me. He would leave me all the time. So then I felt abandoned.
Yeah.
And so then it just was this continuous.
Terrible. Cycle.
it was more, the running part was because of the confrontation.
Yeah, you didn't like that.
Right. Even though I wanted to voice my opinion and be so angry.
But the minute it came from the other side, you were no longer in control of the situation.
Right. And he wanted to control it. And if I'd speak up, he didn't like it, it would be a fight. And we were on this long backpacking trip, and my best friend sent me down and she said, you have a control problem.
Wow.
She said, you're holding on to him. Everybody can see it. You have to let go. God, it's not in your hands.
Yeah.
and I had the ears to hear her. I didn't love it,
No.
but
Yeah, it's scary to let
it
go.
was scary because, and then I'm like, well, what if he cheats on me? She says, what if he does? God has got you.
Because the reality is he can cheat on you while you're controlling him.
He would probably drive him to it more because
Yeah.
I was holding so tight and this man so controlled. And so she said, you gotta let go,
Yeah.
girl. And
Yeah.
so that weekend in the middle of the wilderness, I made a commitment to say, you know what, God, he's all yours.
Wow.
I have nothing. And so whatever you choose, I'm going to trust you. And if he cheats on me, I know you got me.
Yeah.
And that really started the freedom walk in
Yeah.
our marriage.
Yeah.
Plus we moved to Texas for a couple of years.
Okay.
And that really, even though we didn't see each other much because I was working 90 hours a week
I was traveling.
and she was traveling.
But it got him out of the job where he was having his playground for his affairs was in his job.
Okay.
So God pulled him out of that
Yeah.
and put us in a place where we could start that healing
Yes.
that we had.
And did you find community there too?
No.
Okay.
We found a church that we really liked,
Yeah.
but we didn't have the community
Community at all.
community of friends.
So we moved back to California
Okay.
at COVID.
Oh.
One of the blessings of COVID, we moved
Yes.
back with our kids, our community, our men's and women's group,
Yeah.
and continued to heal
Yeah.
and work on anger and trust issues.
I was looking at, I want to turn this on quickly. My battery was like, it's on 5%. And I need to read what I wrote down here this morning. But I was just reading through your testimony, Jesse, and I often think, like I was just thinking about your heart just now while you were talking and how you weep and you cry and you have such a soft heart. But that the bondage that you were under was creating such anger because that's not who the Lord created to be. He actually created Jesse with a soft heart and a man who has authority, but in the Bible, I was reading up on who Jesse was in the Bible, and he was the father of David. And his name, Jesse, means God exists and gift. And your whole life, you've never felt like you were a gift to anybody. In fact, you probably felt like you were, very undesirable. The gift was always some within somebody else. You never quite belonged. And I just thought that was so incredible how your name literally means gift and that God exists. And look at your story. Like, look at how God has woven it all together. And his redemption is so powerful. He's able to redeem such brokenness and, just bring such beauty out of it. But Jesse was important in the Bible because Jesus' lineage originates with Jesse and foretells the coming of the Redeemer. He was a man with authority. And the baggage from our past can make us want to sit down and keep quiet. But I do believe that God is giving you the authority to speak confidently. And I know that the testimony of your lives shows the goodness of God, that he exists and that he is the Redeemer. And you guys are such a gift. And I have no doubt that there are going to be so many marriages and individuals who have walked through such brokenness. Maybe you've never experienced the community that you did, who are going to find a home in your hearts. And they're going to feel like when they walk through your door, they're going to feel like they've come home. And they're going to be able to start their healing journey. And I always say that breakthrough and freedom, when we work at it, because it's really hard. It's hard to let go of control.
It's so
It's
hard.
hard to trust. It's hard to choose to surrender to the Lord because we have to let go. And in order to say, okay, I surrender, we have to let go. And you can feel so unsafe in the process. But I just think you guys have done the hard work and you continue to do the hard heart work. And I want to honor you both because, I know that many times it would have been easier to walk away. But God brought you both to each other at a time when you were so broken. And I know, like, what was hidden got exposed, but the Lord does not exploit us. He walks us into healing and into health, and he partners with us, and he takes no delight in mud being smeared on your face. In fact, he wants to help you to clean it up. I remember my son, just in closing, he was brushing his teeth and he had tried to get the toothpaste on his toothbrush and had spilt it all over the sink. And he quickly closed the door and he was like, no, just give me some time. I don't want you to come in. I don't want you to see it. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, let me in. I want to see. And I saw the mess and I was like, oh, my boy, you need to feel that way. Like, I want to help you to clean it. That's why I'm here. I want to help you to clean up the mess. And that's what the Lord does for us.
Amen.
Yeah. Takes all the mess and turns it into something beautiful.
Cleaned up.
You guys cleaned up pretty good.
Cleaned up pretty good, babe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for him, our life wouldn't be the way that it is today.
Mm-hmm. I love that scripture that you shared at the men's breakfast I wasn't there, but Fred told me about the old man, and that's no more, and Christ has made you into a new creation. And the old things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind, because God has done, behold, I've done a new thing. I know those are two different scriptures, but I just merged them into one.
I like it.
It's my paraphrase. But the Lord is doing a new thing in you guys.
The one thing that through all this, even preparing for to speak at the men's breakfast, like, you don't realize how much hurt that you've really caused until when we were in it, it was rough, but preparing everything and kind of rehashing or re-looking, through it all, I caused her a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, and I'm sorry.
Oh,
it's all right. God's got us.
Yeah.
You're a new man.
I think that you guys need to renew your vows sometime.
On the beach.
And go on a beautiful honeymoon.
Agreed. We need a honeymoon redo.
You need a redo.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
Well, we love you guys, and I just really want to honor you for your openness, and just
thanks for
words are
having
difficult
us.
when you hear a story like that, but thank the Lord for his kindness that leads us to repentance and leads us into wholeness, and that he just he cares so much about our hearts, and now you're able to give because your heart is filled with that perfect love, the Father's love. And we might not always know how to love the way someone needs to be loved, but it's his love inside of us. And now you're able to give that to children and grandchildren and your beautiful wife, and the same for you.
Absolutely.
To walk in confidence in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week for episode 8. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Journey podcast. I hope that you were encouraged and that you would have a really great week just reflecting on what we've spoken about today. If you have a story that you feel needs to be shared to encourage those who listen, please would you write a comment in the comment section below, and we will reach out to you via email. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to the next episode of the Journey podcast next week.